Hello, and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent McCurry from the Voice of America in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, I'm Vincent McCurry at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Joke Rogers in Lagos brings you that story.
The Imo State government in southeast Nigeria is urging women in the state, especially mothers, to adhere strictly to the World Health Assembly's recommendation of exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, introduction of adequate complementary feeding for 6 months, and continued breastfeeding for 2 years or more for children. Our correspondent, Eyitope Kutei, reports.
The Imo State government is bringing together mothers across the 27 local government areas of the state to mark the World Health Organization's awareness campaign on the importance of the mother's milk. And the theme for 2024 is Closing the Gap, Breastfeeding Support for All. The Executive Secretary of the Imo State Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Maria Johannes Uzoma, speaks to nursing mothers on the nutritional values to their babies.
This year's World Breastfeeding Week is another opportunity for all mothers and expectant mothers in Imo State to appreciate exclusive breastfeeding.
The expectation is that breastfeeding will be exclusive within the first 2 years of a child's life.
Concerted action is therefore needed, especially in our states, in order to achieve the World Health Assembly target of at least 50% exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months by 2025. I therefore urge all breastfeeding mothers, especially all of you that have come here today and have demonstrated how you breastfeed your children, to follow the World Health Assembly recommendation of exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, introduction of adequate complementary feeding from 6 months, and continued breastfeeding for 2 years or more.
While expressing worries over the low exclusive breastfeeding and complementary feeding rates in Imo State, the wife of the Imo State Governor, Chioma Uzodimma, represented by the Commissioner for Women Affairs, Nkechi Ugu, asked mothers to take exclusive breastfeeding seriously to boost the child survival rate.
Breastfeeding is recognized as an important public health issue with enormous social and economic implications. It has been recognized by WHO and UNICEF as the gold standard for infant feeding. In our culture also, life is valued and children are cherished. Therefore, the culture has always been open to things that support life, and breastfeeding is one of them.
The World Health Assembly has set a global nutrition target for 2025, and one of the goals is to increase the rate of exclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months of life to at least 50% by 2025, which it believes will address malnutrition and promote healthier lives. Eyitope Kutei, Channels Television News.
Joining us to discuss the Imo State government's breastfeeding awareness is the Commissioner for Primary Health and Social Services, Dr. Prosper Success Ohayaga. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Tell us more about the state government's efforts to encourage exclusive breastfeeding.
The Imo State government, led by His Excellency Distinguished Senator Hope Uzodimma and the First Lady, are championing the World Breastfeeding event in Imo State. Now, we are advocating the fact that breastfeeding mothers, lactating mothers, should breastfeed exclusively. 0 water, no complementary feed, just exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months. And then you can start adding complementary feeds from 6 months and above, but still continue breastfeeding for 2 years and more. Right now, we are actually advocating for 3 years of breastfeeding. What are those benefits? For the babies, you have good immune system, the antibodies that will help them start up is there. You also have good brain development. And for the mothers, it helps them in child spacing. It will also help them with reduction to certain cancer diseases such as breast breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So we are advocating this. And the Imo State government is not leaving out just to say this to the theoretics, but we're also doing our best to see that breastfeeding mothers have 6 months maternity leave, and even doing our best to have crèches in our workplaces to help breastfeeding mothers continue breastfeeding. Thank you.
Right. And what's the government's target in numbers per year to ensure that this is encouraged?
Now, this year, we did above 500 women breastfeeding at the same time during the breastfeeding week. And we are advocating that every breastfeeding mother, starting from the hospitals, starts their breastfeeding 1 hour after delivery. Breastfeeding hospital initiative is what we are advocating. So we are looking at having above 500 mothers breastfeeding exclusively every year. If we do this, if the Ministry of Information will take it as part of their corporate social responsibility, like you are doing now, to talk to people about breastfeeding, I bet you will notice that our women will start breastfeeding. What is this fear in most women? Most of our young girls will say, oh, when I breastfeed, my breast is sad. My dear, whether you breastfeed or not, as you age, the breast will sag because it's a function of the muscle. But when you breastfeed, it doesn't mean that your breast will sag. What about these our young girls who move around and exposing their breast? Why don't we encourage them to say, this is the natural food put by God for our children? Please put them well and use them well. Encourage our mothers in the churches, in the mosque, in the marketplaces, in the workplaces, to continue breastfeeding their children. Don't be ashamed to bring out the God-given food to your children. I think if we keep doing this, our target population will go far above what we have started with now. Thank you.
And what support is being given to families, especially those of nursing mothers, so they do not get overwhelmed in this process?
It doesn't overwhelm you. In fact, it is cheaper. It is cheaper than baby formula. I don't say that baby formula is not good, but it is cheaper for you in the first 6 months after delivery to breastfeed your child. During this period, we gave a gift to mothers to say thank you for even breastfeeding your children, because you're giving us a healthy population. And we are doing our best to make sure that this actually keeps going on and on in our state. We are not stopping at the breastfeeding week at all. This is a message that will keep going on. Billboards are being erected to say, keep breastfeeding your children for 6 months. We are giving out flyers. We are talking to trado religious leaders to keep talking to their people. We are meeting hospitals, pediatricians, to keep encouraging mothers to breastfeed. In fact, just last week, 2 weeks ago, we had the maternal infant young child nutrition training, where we trained state trainers of trainers that will now go to local government areas to keep training people. These are all what we are putting into place to make sure that we encourage them. So I think we are doing our best. We'll keep doing our best, and we'll keep encouraging best practices in breastfeeding.
We must thank you for your time today. That was the Commissioner for Primary Health and Social Services in Imo State, Dr. Prosper Success Ohayaga. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. After the break, as food insecurity mounts in Nigeria's conflict-ridden northeast, the United Nations Humanitarian Agency struggles to raise enough funds to tackle the problem. Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. The United Nations Humanitarian Agency says it is struggling to raise enough funds to tackle an alarming rate of food insecurity in Nigeria's conflict-ridden northeast. Officials say a rising number of global crises are forcing countries that need help to compete for scarce resources. VOS correspondent Timothy Obiezu reports from Edikwa in Borno State, warning the following video includes graphic images that some may find disturbing. Viewers' discretion is advised.
The desperate cries of severely malnourished children echo in this hospital in northeast Nigeria, where they wait in line for life-saving treatment. This facility in Dikwa is about 90 kilometers from the city center. It's already treated more than 300 children this year, and new patients are arriving every day. Aid workers say there isn't enough space to handle them all.
There are more than 45 patients waiting for us to admit them. What we do is that we will do rounds. If we do ward rounds and we find out there are those that are stable, those that have been cured, they are free to go home.
But for every child that goes home, officials say about 10 others need the spot. And eligibility sometimes is based on the severity of conditions.
My son became sick because I was hungry. I couldn't eat well enough to breastfeed both of them. But here our situation has improved. They feed me 3 times a day.
The UN Children's Agency says every hour, 100 Nigerian children under the age of 5 die of malnutrition, and that only 20% of the sick children get treated. The United Nations warns without immediate intervention, there could be catastrophic consequences of food insecurity in places like this. Officials say the food insecurity and malnutrition crisis are the compound effect of the prolonged insurgency, climate change, and government policies that have sent food prices beyond reach. Food inflation in Nigeria has surpassed 40% according to the Statistics Office. In May, the UN and Nigerian authorities launched a $306 million appeal to address food security for about 5 million people in states most affected by conflict.
If you look at the trends of humanitarian funding that Nigeria has been receiving in the 10 past year, you see a constant decline. You see a real shrinking of this funding because also, as I say, priority comes into conflict. The number of conflicts increases almost day by day, month by month, year by year.
But back in Dikwa, aid groups are helping thousands grow food at home using methods that are climate smart.
Our participants bought bumper harvest from the arable crop that they farm on their farmland. They diversify their means of livelihood and thereby ensuring food security.
Nigeria announced plans to suspend taxes on certain food imports, including wheat and maize, to return to lower prices. But until something drastic happens, officials say the future of millions of people, especially children, hangs in the balance. Timothy Obiezu, VOA News, Dikwa, Borno State, Nigeria.
The Nigerian High Commission has hosted its second annual executive breakfast meeting in Pretoria, South Africa. The event gathered members of the Nigerian community and key stakeholders to discuss critical strategies for economic growth, bilateral relations, and foreign investments. Our correspondent Innocent Samosa reports.
The event served as a platform for open dialogue and collaboration, bringing together key members of the Nigerian community, business leaders, and government officials. A central focus of the meeting was on strategies for economic growth and development, with discussions centered on how Nigeria and South Africa can further strengthen their bilateral ties. Dr. Ibrahimo Bello from Technical Lead gave a keynote address.
In our early days, in our undergraduate days in Nigeria, there's a quote that they used to say to us, and the quote would go something like this: perspire to acquire the desire you admire, do not retire even when you feel tired, but refire in order to acquire that desire you admire.
The meeting wasn't without its challenges. Several concerns were raised by the Nigerian business community. The Nigerian High Commission in Pretoria, Ambassador Alexandra Timotope Ajayi explains.
One of it is that regulatory framework, because from the Nigerian side, the perception is that South African environment, business environment, is not really welcoming. You understand, because of a lot of regulatory regimes that is in place.
South Africa's former Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu, emphasized the importance of leveraging each other's social and economic strength to drive mutual prosperity.
Nigeria and South Africa are, how would I call it? Could I describe it as inseparable twins? Because they are strategically positioned in Africa and they are the pace setters.
As the event concluded, there was a sense of renewed commitment from all sides to work together in addressing these challenges and unlocking new opportunities for growth. From Pretoria, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
It's time now for a short break. As we do, remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. And still to come, a new variety of rice may increase yields and profit for Ivorian farmers. Details soon.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. After fleeing conflict in Somalia, Mohammed Matan overcame many challenges growing up in Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp. Today, he is helping young refugees learn digital skills that could lead to a brighter future. Viewer reporter Ahmed Hussein met Matan in the Dahale section of Dadaab and has this story.
Here in the Dahale refugee camp in northeastern Kenya, 30-year-old Mohammed Matan is teaching young refugees digital skills and hopes that those skills can lead to better opportunities.
We teach both basic and advanced computer program and other skills like freelancing, data entry, web development and web design to help refugee youth access online jobs.
Web development, web design,
Matan's parents fled Somalia in 2001 when he was 7 years old. Matan initially started doing manual work, but later he enrolled in a UN-supported digital skills training program in the camps.
I started this initiative to help youth in the refugee camps avoid drug abuse and other activities that will compromise safety and security. Once a refugee is unemployed, they tend to engage in harmful activities, so we decided to empower them.
Students are able to attend different classes during the week, while some opt for weekend sessions. Abdurrahman Hassan is one of the trainees and says the program has benefited him.
We have learned digital skills like freelancing online, software and other computer skills that will enable me to access opportunities online and earn a living. We have benefited a lot.
Matan currently offers free classes to over 70 students in the refugee camp and aims to expand the program. However, he says there are some difficulties and needs assistance.
Some of the challenges we face are using old computers and the internet is slow. But if we get support, we hope to expand and improve the machines to keep up with the changing digital technology.
Kenya is home to nearly 800,000 refugees and asylum seekers primarily from Somalia and South Sudan, according to the United Nations. Trained refugees such as Mohammed Matan are optimistic that the skills they have gained here will pave the way for greater opportunities ahead. Ahmed Hussein for VOA News, Dadaab Refugee Camp, Kenya.
Ivorian farmers are turning to a new rice variety for increased yields and profit. This variation includes better irrigation, mechanization and improved short-cycle drought-resistant seeds.
Ivorian rice farmer Francois Kasseyao has struggled to make ends meet with only one harvest per year before he planted a new variety resistant to unpredictable weather conditions, capable of producing larger yields. The grain, introduced as part of a program designed to increase outputs of the regional staple food and cut dependence on imports, allows rice growers to get 2 harvests per year, with a yield of up to 5 metric tons per hectare.
Today, the yield is better with this new variety. Before, we had other varieties and we couldn't get by. But since we started with the new variety, we're doing just fine. We can get 4 or 5 tons per hectare. I can truly say that rice nourishes us today.
Before the introduction of the new program that includes better irrigation, mechanization, and improved short-cycle drought-resistant seeds, farmers struggled to produce 1 metric ton per hectare in some areas. Ivorian production of local white rice currently stands at 1.4 million metric tons, far below the national consumption of 2.1 million. But the Agency for the Development of Rice Sector, ADEPI, says the latest investment of 330 billion CFA franc, that's about $551.38 million, made by the state, its partners and the private sector will enable the country to be self-sufficient in 3 years.
In our projections for 2027, 3 years from now, we should be producing around 2.2 million tons of rice. But all this will depend on figures gathered by the National Statistics Institute, which will give us the level of consumption habits and the different varieties we consume.
To fully cover domestic demand, Côte d'Ivoire imports rice mainly from countries such as India, Thailand and Pakistan. A decision by India to curb its imports last year has raised shortage concerns in several African countries.
John Collins visited Ghana as a child with his father, but life brought him back years later, and the musician never left. VOA's Isaac Kadelti met him in Accra, and Anthony Labruto narrates.
John Collins was already a musician in his British homeland when he moved and settled permanently in Ghana. But it wasn't his first trip to the African nation.
I came to Ghana as a child, not with any purpose, but then I came back to Ghana in 1969 to be with my dad, because my parents, my mum and dad had divorced, so I wanted to be with my father.
Today, he is a well-known figure in Ghana and West Africa, mainly for his work on popular and neo-traditional music, including highlife and Afrobeat.
I joined so many different bands, I formed so many bands. I went to Nigeria, I played with people like Victor Owaifu, and worked a lot with Fela Kuti, Ani Kalabu Kuti in Nigeria, worked with bands in Ghana, went on TV, I did so many things, but it was all a labor of love.
John Collins has also worked as a music journalist, writer, and historian. His academic publications on African popular and neo-traditional music are used in universities all over the world. But, he says, living in Ghana was not all that smooth for him.
Well, it's very tough, of course. I mean, I never in Britain experienced things like coups and curfews, shortages, and so on. Dumso, all these things.
Here, at the University of Ghana's music department, Collins helped structure a course in popular and traditional music, and taught for many years. He inspired his former student, Eric Suno Do, to become a music lecturer in the department.
And what fascinated me about him was, like you're saying, that here is a foreigner, a white man, teaching us our music, whilst our people were teaching his kind of music. So I found that to be quite interesting, intriguing, and that is what drew me more closer to him.
Collins married a Ghanaian and has a son and a grandchild. He feels that it is the Ghanaian people who have made his stay in Africa memorable.
All I've been talking about is not about the climate, not about the food, the sunshine. Everything that's positive is ultimately people. It's people who create the world.
Collins has spent his career learning popular and traditional Ghanaian music and helped inspire young Ghanaian musicians like these ones who gather here at the University of Ghana every month to keep both genres alive. For Isaac Kaledzi in Accra, Ghana, this is Anthony Labruto, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. Do remember that channelstv.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joke Rogers. Thanks for watching and goodbye.